Kong Tai-ho found the girl on the third day of his cargo run. He had gone down to the lower hold to check on a loose crate. The ship was old and tired, just like him. Things came loose. Things broke. That was life on the outer rim. Where the stars were cold and the stations were far apart, the hold was dark and smelled of metal and dust. Tai-ho walked between the tall stacks of supply crates, his boots heavy on the floor. He was thinking about nothing in particular. Just the job. Just the delivery. Just the next station and the credits he would earn. Then he saw the small gray foot sticking out. From behind a water tank, he stopped walking. His hand moved to the tool at his belt. Not a weapon, but close enough. Pirates sometimes hid on cargo ships. Thieves. Desperate people looking for a way. Off dying worlds. But this foot was small. Too small for a pirate. Tai-ho moved closer. He grabbed the edge of the crate and looked behind it. A child stared back at him. She was not human. Her skin was the color of storm clouds, smooth and soft-looking. Her eyes were huge and round, glowing a soft amber color in the dim light. Two thin antennae rose from her forehead, trembling slightly. She was thin, very thin. Her clothes were torn and dirty, and she held a piece of old fabric against her chest like it was something precious. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Tai-ho spoke. His voice was rough from days of silence. "Who are you?" The girl did not scream. She did not run. She simply looked at him with those enormous eyes and said nothing. Tai-ho reached down and pulled her out from behind the crate. She was light. Too light. He could feel her bones through her thin arms. She did not fight him. She did not try to escape. She just let him move her, like she had already accepted whatever would happen next. He set her on her feet and stepped back. "How did you get on my ship?" The girl's mouth opened. Her voice was quiet and broken, like she was not used to speaking. "I hid when you loaded cargo." At the station, her words were in Galactic Common, the language everyone used between species. But her accent was strange, and she spoke slowly, like each word was difficult. "You've been hiding for 3 days?" Tai-ho asked. She nodded. "Eating what?" She pointed to an open crate nearby. Ration bars. Emergency food supplies meant for the colonists at Station Omega-7. Tai-ho saw the torn wrappers on the floor. She had eaten maybe 4 bars in 3 days. Not nearly enough. He looked at her again, at the torn fabric in her hands, at the way she stood, ready to accept punishment, ready to accept anything because she expected nothing good. "What are you?" he asked, not to be cruel. He simply did not recognize her species. "Vellery," she said. Tai-ho had heard of them. An insect-like species from the inner systems. They were cold and logical. They did not believe in families or love or any of the soft things that humans held dear. They raised their young in big facilities like factories producing products. "Why did you run?" he asked. The girl was quiet for a moment. Her antennae lowered, pressing flat against her head. When she spoke, her voice was even smaller than before. "I am defective." "Defective how?" She looked down at the fabric in her hands. "I feel things. I want things. I attached to another young one in the facility. They said this was wrong. They said I was broken. They tried to fix me." She stopped. Her thin body shook. "When they could not fix me, they scheduled me for recycling." Tai-ho felt something cold move through his chest. Recycling. Breaking down. For biological material, defective products are not wasted. They are used for other things. Tai-ho had seen many terrible things in his life. He had been a combat medic before he was a cargo pilot. He had watched soldiers die. He had held the hands of strangers as they took their last breaths. He had lost his wife and his son to a colonial disaster that still visited him in his nightmares, but this was something different. "How old are you?" he asked. The girl thought about it. "In human years, 9, I think. 9 years old." scheduled to be broken down for parts because she had the crime of feeling love. Taeho turned away. He could not look at her. He walked to the far wall and pressed his hands against the cold metal. He breathed slowly. He tried to think clearly. He was not a hero. He was not a savior. He was a broken man running cargo on the outer rim because he could not face the life he used to have. He had nothing to give anyone. He had nothing left inside him except the cold routine of work and sleep and work again. "I will drop you at the next station," he said. His voice was flat. "There are refugee services. People who help lost children. They can find you somewhere safe." He heard her move behind him, her small feet on the metal floor. "I understand," she said. He waited for her to argue, to cry, to beg. She did none of these things. Instead, she spoke 5 words that hit him harder than any weapon ever had. "Call me your daughter. Be my father." Taeho turned around. The girl stood in the middle of the hold, her amber eyes fixed on him. She was not crying. She was not begging. She was simply asking, simply hoping, simply reaching out with the only thing she had left. "You do not know me," Taeho said. "You do not know what I am, what I have lost, what I cannot give." "I know you are sad," she said. "I saw it in your eyes when you walked through the station. You lost someone. You loved someone, and they are gone." Taeho's hands became fists. "I know what loss looks like," the girl continued, "because I have never had anything to lose. But you have. You loved, and that means you can love again." She took one small step toward him. "I have never had a father. I have never had anyone who wanted me. Not once. Not ever." Her voice cracked, but she did not cry. "Please, call me your daughter. Be my father." Taeho looked at her. At this small gray alien child who had escaped death, hidden in his ship, survived on scraps, and now stood before him asking for the one thing he had sworn never to feel again. He could not do it. He was not strong enough. He was not good enough. The last time he had been a father, his son had died in his arms while fire consumed their colony. "I cannot," he said. He walked past her, toward the ladder that led back to the upper deck. Behind him, he heard her whisper, "I will wait. I will wait until you can." Taeho climbed the ladder and sealed the hatch behind him. He went to the cockpit and sat in his pilot chair. He looked out at the endless stars, cold and distant and uncaring, and for the first time in 5 years, Kang Taeho felt something other than emptiness. He felt afraid, because somewhere deep inside him, in a place he had tried to kill, a door was opening, and he did not know if he had the strength to close it again. For 11 days. The girl followed Taeho like a shadow. She did not ask again. She did not beg or cry or make demands. She simply existed in his space, quiet and patient. Like a small ghost that had decided to haunt his ship, Taeho tried to ignore her. He told himself she was just cargo, just a problem he would solve at the next station, just another lost thing in a galaxy full of lost things. But ignoring her was harder than he expected. On the 4th day, he woke up to find his breakfast already made. The girl had figured out how to use the food processor. The meal was simple, just protein paste and dried fruit. But it was warm and waiting for him when he entered the kitchen area. She stood in the corner, watching him with those huge amber eyes. "You did this?" he asked. She nodded. He ate the food without saying thank you. But he noticed that his hands were shaking slightly. No one had made him a meal in 5 years. On the 6th day, came back to the cockpit after checking the engines and found his tools organized. They had been scattered across his workbench for months, mixed together in a mess he'd never bothered to fix. Now they were lined up by size and type, clean and ready to use. The girl sat in the corner, reading a manual she had found. She did not look up. She did not ask for praise. Taeho said nothing. He sat down in his pilot chair and stared at the stars. But inside his chest, something was shifting. Something he did not want to feel. On the 8th day, he noticed something that bothered him. The girl never slept lying down. Every night, She went to the small space she had made for herself in the cargo hold and stood against the wall with her eyes closed. Sometimes her body swayed. Sometimes her knees buckled. But she never lay down. Taiho watched her through the ship's internal cameras. He told himself he was just checking on his cargo. Making sure nothing was wrong with the ship, he was lying to himself, and he knew it. On the 9th day, he asked her about it. The girl looked surprised that he had spoken to her. Her antennae lifted slightly, the first sign of hope she had shown in days. In the facility we slept in pods, she explained. Upright, strapped in. It is how I learned to rest. I do not know how to do it another way. Taiho thought about this. He thought about a child strapped into a machine every night, unable to move, unable to stretch out, unable to feel anything soft beneath her. That night, he brought a blanket to the cargo hold. He did not speak. He simply dropped it near her small space and walked away. The next morning, he found her curled up on the floor for the first time. The blanket wrapped around her small body. She was sleeping deeply, peacefully, like she had finally found something safe. Taiho stood there for a long time, watching her breathe. On the 11th day, the heating system failed. It was an old ship. Old ships broke. Taiho had dealt with this problem before. He knew how to survive the cold until he could fix the coils. He had thermal blankets. He had emergency supplies, but when he went to the cargo hold to check on the temperature-sensitive medicine he was transporting, he found something that stopped him cold. The girl was sitting against a crate, shaking badly. Her gray skin had turned pale, almost white. Her breath came out in small clouds of mist. She had taken off the blanket he had given her and wrapped it around a container of medical supplies. "What are you doing?" Taiho demanded. Her teeth were chattering. "The medicine. It will spoil if it gets too cold. You need it delivered. You need the credits. You are freezing." She looked up at him. Her eyes were dim, tired, losing their warm amber glow. "You need the cargo delivered. If you lose the cargo, you lose payment. If you lose payment, you cannot buy fuel. If you cannot buy fuel, the ship stops. If the ship stops," she did not finish. She did not need to. Taiho felt something inside him crack. It was like ice breaking on a frozen river, sudden and loud and impossible to stop. "Why?" His voice came out rough, almost angry. "Why would you freeze yourself for my cargo?" The girl was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "'Cause you matter. Your survival matters. I am defective. I am not supposed to matter. But you." She looked at him with those fading amber eyes. "You are not defective. You are good. Even if you do not believe it." Taiho stood there, frozen in place. Not from the cold. From something else entirely. He thought about his son. His little boy who had loved him so completely, so unconditionally, that it had felt like magic. His son who had looked at him the same way this girl was looking at him now, like he was worth something. Like he was someone worth loving. Taiho walked across the hold. He picked up the blanket from the medicine container. He sat down beside the girl and wrapped the blanket around both of them. She was cold. So cold. Her small body pressed against his side, seeking warmth. "The medicine will spoil," she whispered. "I do not care. I'll but your credits. I do not care." Ow. She was quiet. Then, slowly, carefully, she leaned her head against his arm. Her antennae brushed against his sleeve. "Call me your daughter," she whispered. "Be my father." Taiho closed his eyes. He felt the cold all around them. He felt the weight of her small body against his. He felt 5 years of grief and loneliness and empty, hollow days pressing down on him like a mountain. He could not say yes. He was not ready. He was not healed. He was not anything close to the man he used to be, but for the first time, did not say no. He sat there in the cold, holding a small alien girl he barely knew, and he let her stay. He let her lean on him. He let her believe, even if just for a moment, that she was not alone. They sat together until Taiho fixed the heating coils. It took 6 hours. For all 6 hours, the girl stayed beside him. handing him tools, holding lights, doing everything she could to help. When the warmth finally returned to the ship, she looked up at him and smiled. It was small and uncertain, like she was not sure she was allowed to smile. "Thank you," she said. Taeho grunted. He put away his tools. He walked toward the ladder, but then he stopped. He did not turn around. He could not look at her. But he spoke Lyra. The girl went very still. "What? Your name?" "The Valori called you a number. L7742. But that is not a name. Lyra. That is a name." He climbed the ladder and disappeared into the upper deck. Behind him, in the cargo hold, a small gray alien girl stood alone with tears running down her face. But they were not tears of sadness. For the first time in her life, someone had given her a name. And names, she understood, were what you gave to things you wanted to keep. The Valori ship appeared near the Helix Nebula on the 19th day. Taeho saw it on his sensors before he heard the transmission. A patrol interceptor, fast and sharp, cutting through the darkness of space like a blade. It came out of nowhere, dropping from faster than light, traveled directly in his path. His ship was slow, old. There was no way to outrun them. The transmission came through his speakers. "It's like ice. Human vessel. You are carrying Velor biological asset L7742. This asset is defective and scheduled for processing. You will stop your engines and prepare for retrieval." Taeho sat in his pilot chair, his hands on the controls. Behind him, he heard small footsteps. Lyra had come up from the cargo hold. She stood at the edge of the cockpit, her amber eyes wide with fear. "They found me," she whispered. Taeho did not respond. He was staring at the interceptor on his screen. He was thinking, calculating, looking for a way out that did not exist. "Human vessel," the transmission continued. "This is not a request. Asset L7742 is property of the Valori Collective. You have no legal standing to hold this property. Surrender it immediately or face destruction." Lyra's small body was shaking. Her antennae were flat against her head, pressed down in pure terror. She looked at Taeho with eyes that expected nothing, eyes that had already accepted what would happen next. "I will go," she said quietly. "I will not let them hurt you because of me." Taeho turned his chair. He looked at her. At this small gray girl who had made him breakfast and organized his tools and given up her blanket for his cargo. At this child who had asked him for nothing except to be wanted. "No," he said. Lyra blinked. "But they will destroy your ship. They will kill you." "No," he said again. He turned back to the console. He opened a channel to the interceptor. His voice was calm, steady, like stone. "This is Captain Kong Taeho of the cargo vessel Dawn Star. The individual you are calling? L7742 is under human protection. She will not be surrendered." There was silence from the other ship. Then, a new voice came through. Deeper, colder, the commander. "Human protection? What authority do you have to protect Valori property? She is not property. She is a child. She is a biological asset, defective, scheduled for recycling. You have no recognized relationship with this asset. Under Valori law, under Galactic Compact Article 77, you have no legal standing. Return her or be destroyed." Taeho heard Lyra crying behind him. Small, quiet sobs that she was trying to hide. He heard her whisper something. He could not make out the words, but he knew what she was saying. She was saying goodbye. Something changed inside Taeho in that moment. Something that had been frozen for 5 years suddenly caught fire. It burned through his chest, like a star being born. He opened a connection to the Galactic Compact Registry. It was the legal database that governed all interactions between species. Every law, every custom, every rule that kept the galaxy from falling into chaos. He searched for human family law. He found what he was looking for. Compact Article 77 states that disputes over familial bonds must defer to species-specific customs. Taeho transmitted to the interceptor. Human custom recognizes adoption. The legal and emotional claiming of a child by a non-biological parent? I am invoking that custom now. Silence from the Velour ship. What documentation do you have? The commander asked. Tejo turned his chair again. He looked at Lyra. She was standing in the doorway, tears streaming down her gray cheeks. Her small hands clutched together like she was praying. For 19 days, she had asked him the same thing. For 19 days, he had walked away, unable to answer, too afraid of what it would mean. He was not afraid anymore. Lyra, he said. His voice was different now, softer, warmer. Do you want to be my daughter? The girl's eyes went wide. Her antennae shot up. Her whole body went still, like she was afraid to move, afraid that any movement would break this moment and prove it was not real. More than anything, she whispered. More than anything in any galaxy? Tejo nodded. He turned back to the console. There is your documentation, he transmitted to the Velour commander. A child asked. A father answered. By human law? By human custom? By every definition my species holds sacred? She is mine. She is my daughter. And I will die before I let you take her. The silence stretched for a long time. Tejo watched the interceptor on his screen. Its weapons were still charged. Its targeting systems were still locked onto his ship. Then the commander's voice returned. It was different now, confused, almost disturbed. You would die for a defective spawn that shares none of your biology? This is irrational. This serves no logical purpose. Tejo smiled. It was a strange feeling. He had not smiled in years.
Oh.
He said, This is human. The interceptor's weapons powered down. Tejo felt shock wash over him. He had expected to die. He had been ready to die. But the weapons were off. The targeting locks were released. We do not understand your species, the commander said. You form bonds with things that give you nothing. You protect creatures that are not your own. You sacrifice yourselves for beings that have no value. She has value to me, Tejo replied. That is all that matters. Another long silence. The Velour Collective will file a formal protest with the Galactic Compact, the commander finally said. This matter is not finished. File whatever you want, Tejo said. She is still my daughter. The transmission ended. The interceptor turned slowly in space, its engines glowing blue. Then it jumped to faster than light speed and disappeared into the darkness. Tejo sat in his chair, breathing heavily. His hands were shaking. He had been ready to die. He had been absolutely certain they would open fire. Small arms wrapped around him from behind. Lyra was hugging him. Her thin gray arms barely reached around his shoulders, but she held on tight, pressing her face against his back, sobbing. You called me your daughter, she cried. You said I was yours. Tejo reached up and put his hand over her small fingers. He could feel her tears soaking through his shirt. You asked me 19 times, he said quietly. I should have answered on the first day you were not ready. I was scared. Lyra moved around his chair. She looked up at him with those amber eyes, still wet with tears, still shaking with emotion. Are you still scared? Tejo thought about it. He thought about his son, buried on a dead colony world. He thought about his wife, lost in the same fire that took his boy. He thought about 5 years of running, 5 years of emptiness, 5 years of refusing to feel anything. Yes, he admitted. I am still scared. I am scared every moment. But being scared does not matter anymore. Why not? He reached out and touched her face. Her skin was cool and smooth under his rough fingers. Because you are my daughter now. And fathers do not run from things that scare them. Fathers face them. For their children, Lyra closed her eyes. Tears kept falling, but she was smiling. A real smile. A bright smile. A smile that made her whole face glow. Father, she whispered, testing the word. My father. Tejo pulled her close and held her tight. Outside the ship, the stars burned cold and distant. The galaxy continued its slow, ancient dance. Somewhere, Velour officials were filing protests and writing reports about the irrational behavior of humans. None of it mattered. In a small cargo ship called the Dawn Star, A broken man and a lost girl held each other in the darkness of space, and for the first time in years, neither of them was alone. The months that followed were not easy. Taiho did not know how to be a father anymore. His son had died at 6 years old, caught in a fire that had consumed their entire colony. In those flames, Taiho had lost everything. His wife Yuna, his boy, his home, his heart. For 5 years, he had lived like a ghost, moving from job to job, station to station, never staying, never connecting, never allowing himself to feel anything that could hurt him again. Now he had a daughter, and he had no idea what to do with her. Lyra, for her part, did not know how to be a daughter at all. She had never been held as a child, never been told she mattered, never been given praise or comfort or any of the things that human children took for granted in the Valori facility. She had been a product, a thing to be processed. When she showed signs of attachment, they had tried to fix her with machines and chemicals. When that failed, they had scheduled her for disposal. She knew how to survive. She did not know how to live, so they learned together. The first weeks were awkward. Taiho would say something gruff, and Lyra would flinch, thinking she had done something wrong. Lyra would ask a simple question, and Taiho would struggle to answer, not used to speaking about feelings or hopes or anything beyond cargo schedules. They ate meals in silence. They worked on the ship in silence. They existed together in a quiet, careful space, both of them afraid of breaking something fragile. But slowly, day by day, things began to change. Taiho taught Lyra to read human script because she asked. She had learned Galactic Common in the facility, but she wanted to know the language of her new father. She wanted to understand the words on his old books, the labels on his belongings, the writing on the holophoto that he kept on his console. The holophoto showed a woman with kind eyes, a small boy with Taiho's smile. Lyra did not ask about them. She knew pain when she saw it. She simply learned to read the names written below the image, Yuna and Duhayan, in return. Lyra taught Taiho about Valori constellation maps. Her species had charted the stars in ways that humans never had, finding patterns and paths that connected distant galaxies. Taiho had always found these maps beautiful, even before he knew they existed. When Lyra showed him her people's star charts, he sat in his pilot chair for hours, just looking, just learning, just letting this small gray girl share something of her own. Cooking was a disaster. Taiho had survived on ration bars and protein paste for years. He could not cook anything more complicated than boiled water. When he tried to make Lyra a real meal, he burned it. Again and again. 17 times in a row. On the 18th attempt, Lyra gently took the cooking tools from his hands. "Let me," she said. She had watched him carefully. She had learned the controls. And somehow, despite never having cooked before, she produced something that was actually edible. Taiho stared at the meal. "How did you do that?" Lyra smiled. "I watched you fail 17 times. I learned what not to do." It was the first joke she had ever made. Taiho laughed. It was rough and strange, like a machine starting up after years of silence. But it was real after that. Lyra did most of the cooking. The nights were harder. Lyra had nightmares. Terrible dreams about the facility, about the machines they had used on her, about the cold voices that had told her she was defective, broken, worthless. She would wake up screaming, her amber eyes wild with terror, her antennae pressed flat against her head. The first time it happened, Taiho did not know what to do. He stood in the doorway of her small room, frozen, watching her cry. Then he remembered. He remembered sitting beside Do-Yan's bed when his son had nightmares. He remembered the songs Yuna used to sing, soft melodies from an old Earth that neither of them had ever seen. Taiho walked to Lyra's bed. He sat down beside her, and he began to hum. The melody was rough. His voice was not meant for singing, but he hummed anyway. The same song Yuna had sung 1,000 times. The same notes that had once calmed a frightened little boy. Lyra stopped crying. Her breathing slowed. Her eyes focused on him, confused at first, then understanding. "What? What is that?" she whispered. "A song From my homeworld? Well, the homeworld of my species. A planet called Earth, very far away. It is beautiful. Tai-Ho kept humming until she fell asleep. He sat beside her for a long time after, watching her breathe, feeling something warm and painful in his chest. He did this every night after that. Every time she woke from nightmares, he would come to her room and hum until she calmed. Sometimes he stayed until morning. Sometimes he fell asleep in the chair beside her bed. It helped her, but it also helped him. For 5 years, Tai-Ho had been running from memories of his son. Now, caring for Lyra, those memories stopped being weapons. They became tools instead. Ways to help. Ways to heal. He started calling her names. At first it was just Kid. Short and simple, safe. Then it became Little One. Warmer. More personal then. One day, without thinking, he called her daughter.
Ow.
Lyra froze. Her eyes went wide. She stared at him like he had just given her the entire galaxy.
Say it again?
She whispered. Tai-Ho felt his face grow hot. He looked away. It was nothing. Just a word, say it again, please. He looked at her. At those amber eyes full of hope. At that small gray face that had become so familiar over the months. "My daughter," he said quietly. "My daughter." Lyra cried for an hour. Not from sadness. From joy. From the overwhelming, impossible weight of being wanted. The galaxy around them continued to be complicated. The Vellery filed 17 formal protests with the Galactic Compact, demanding the return of their property. Legal scholars debated whether human adoption customs could apply to alien species. Scientists wrote papers about the anomaly of a Vellery, child capable of forming attachments. Tai-Ho ignored all of it. When other humans questioned his choice, he corrected them once, firmly, clearly. "She is my daughter. That is all anyone needs to know." No one questioned him twice. Lyra grew, not just in size, but in spirit. She stopped flinching at sudden sounds. She learned to laugh. She discovered that she loved reading stories about heroes and adventures and families that stayed together through hard times. She learned to sleep lying down, properly, with soft blankets and comfortable pillows. She learned that food could be warm and delicious, not just ration bars and dark cargo holds. She learned that touch could be gentle, not just the cold grip of machines. And she learned what family meant. One night, after dinner, Lyra looked at the holophoto on the console. At Yuna and Doyon, frozen in time, smiling forever. "Ah, do you miss them?" she asked. Tai-Ho was quiet for a long moment. "Every day. Do you? Do you wish I was him? Your son?" Tai-Ho turned to look at her. His eyes were sad, but also warm. Warmer than she had ever seen them. "No," he said. "I do not wish you were him. You are not a replacement, Lyra. You are not a substitute. You are you, my daughter, different, separate, loved for who you are, not who you remind me of." Lyra felt tears in her eyes again. Happy tears. Healing tears. "I love you, Father," she said. Tai-Ho reached out and pulled her into a hug. He held her tight, this small gray alien girl who had asked him to be her father, until he finally said yes. "I love you too, daughter," he whispered. "I love you too." Outside the ship, the stars burned on, cold and distant and endless. But inside the dawn star, there was warmth. There was family. There was love. And that was all that mattered. 3 years had passed since the day Tai-Ho found a gray-skinned girl hiding in his cargo hold. 3 years of learning. 3 years of growing. 3 years of becoming a family in ways neither of them had expected. Lyra was no longer the shivering, starving child who had stolen ration bars to survive. She was taller now, stronger, her amber eyes bright with intelligence and confidence. She had earned her certification as a junior navigator. She spoke 4 languages fluently. She had read hundreds of books and could argue about philosophy with scholars twice her age. But more than any of this, she carried herself differently, like someone who knew she belonged, like someone who had never doubted her own worth. That was a lie, of course. She had doubted herself many times. But she had a father now, and he had taught her that doubt was not the same as truth. Today, she stood before the Galactic Compact Council. The council chamber was enormous. It floated in space aboard a station at the center of known civilization. Representatives from 100 species sat in rings around the central platform, their strange faces and alien bodies filling the room with colors and shapes that no single world could contain. Lyra stood on that central platform, lone under the lights. Facing them all, she was not afraid. The council had summoned her to testify about what they were calling the human adoption phenomenon. In the years since, Taiho had claimed her as his daughter. 47 other humans had done the same thing. They had adopted alien children from a dozen different species. Orphans rejected by their own kinds. Children abandoned for disabilities, mutations, or simply being inconvenient. All of them claimed by humans. We asked for nothing in return except the chance to love them. The galaxy did not understand. The galaxy had never seen anything like this. Citizen Kong Lyra, the council speaker said. He was a tall being with blue skin and 4 arms, and his voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. You were once designated Asset L7742 by the Valerie Collective. You were scheduled for recycling due to a psychological defect that made you form inappropriate emotional attachments. Lyra nodded. That is correct. Yet you now stand before us as the legal daughter of a human. You have been raised by this human for 3 years. You have taken his family name. You have, by all observable measures, become part of his species' family structure. That is also correct. The speaker leaned forward. The council wishes to understand this phenomenon. What is it about humans that makes your species capable of such behavior? Lyra had prepared for this question. She had thought about it for weeks, practiced her answer in front of mirrors, discussed it with her father late into many nights. But when she opened her mouth, the prepared words disappeared. What came out instead was something simpler, something truer. Humans are fragile, she said. The chamber went quiet. They live briefly. Compared to many species in this room, human lives are like candle flames. Short, quick to burn out. They break easily. Their bodies are soft. Their bones are weak. They cannot survive extreme temperatures or pressures. They need food and water constantly. They get sick. They age. They die. She paused, looking around at the alien faces watching her. Most species would see this fragility as a weakness, something to overcome, something to engineer away. But humans do not see it that way. They understand more than any species I have met that existence is temporary, that loss is inevitable, that everything they love will eventually be taken from them. Lyra felt emotion rising in her chest. She pushed through it. Because they know this, they do something remarkable, something that makes no logical sense, something that breaks every rule of survival and self-preservation. She took a breath. They choose to love anyway. The chamber was completely silent now. Even the representatives who usually whispered among themselves were still. Humans look at a child who is not their blood, not their species, not anything they were programmed to accept, Lyra continued. And they say 4 words that change everything. They say, "You are mine now." They claim us. They hold us. They fight for us. They promise to carry us until the stars go dark, knowing full well that they themselves will burn out long before the stars do. She felt tears on her cheeks. She did not wipe them away. My father found me hiding in his ship. I was nothing to him. Less than nothing. I was a defective product running from a species that wanted to break me down for parts. He had lost his wife. He had lost his son. He had spent 5 years alone, running from grief, refusing to feel anything ever again. She looked up at the gallery where Taiho was sitting. He was watching her with tears in his own eyes, tears he would never admit to later. He had every reason to abandon me at the next station. Every reason to forget I existed. Every reason to protect what little peace he had found in his emptiness. Her voice cracked, but she kept going.
He's dead.
He taught me what family means. Not blood. Not genetics. Not logic or survival or any of the cold calculations that most species use to define relationships. Just a choice. A promise. A love stubborn enough to exist even when every rational argument says it should not. She straightened her shoulders. You asked what makes humans capable of this. The answer is simple. Humans understand that the universe is cold, dark, indifferent. It does not care about any of us. It will watch us all die and feel nothing. She smiled, a real smile, warm and bright. And humans have decided, irrationally, beautifully, magnificently, to be warm anyway, to light their small fires against the darkness, to love things that will break their hearts, to claim children who share nothing with them except the need to be wanted. She looked around the chamber one final time. That is what humans give the galaxy. That is what my father gave me. Not protection, not resources, not any of the practical things that make sense. He gave me something that cannot be measured or traded or explained by any logic. She touched her chest. He gave me belonging. He gave me worth. He gave me a place in the universe that was mine just because he chose to make it so. She stepped back from the central platform. I was defective, broken, scheduled for destruction. And a human saw me hiding in his cargo hold, looked at me with eyes full of grief and pain and loss, and decided that I mattered anyway. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. But in the silent chamber, everyone heard. That is what humans are. That is what they do. They find broken things and love them whole again. She bowed her head. I have nothing more to say. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, something extraordinary happened. The representatives began to react. Some nodded. Some made sounds of approval in their species' languages. Some simply stared at Lyra with expressions that might have been wonder. The speaker looked at her for a long time. Then he spoke. The council will consider your testimony. You have given us much to think about, Citizen Kong Lyra. Lyra bowed and walked away from the platform. She climbed the stairs to the gallery where her father was waiting. Taiho stood up as she approached. His face was wet. He was not trying to hide it anymore. He could not finish. His voice broke. Lyra hugged him. He hugged her back, tight and warm, the way he had learned to hold her over 3 years of being her father. Thank you, she whispered into his chest. For everything. Taiho pulled back. He looked at her face. He cupped her gray cheeks in his rough hands. You do not need to thank me, he said. You asked me to be your father. You asked me again and again until I finally said yes. You saved me, Lyra, as much as I saved you. Lyra smiled. Then we saved each other, as Taiho smiled back. We saved each other. They turned and walked out of the council chamber together. Father and daughter. Human and Valerie. 2 broken things that had somehow made each other whole. Behind them, the representatives continued to discuss what they had heard. Papers would be written. Laws would be debated. The galaxy would slowly, eventually, begin to understand what humans meant by family. But none of that mattered to Taiho and Lyra. They had a ship waiting for them. They had cargo to deliver. They had stars to cross and adventures to find. And they had each other. As they walked through the station toward their ship, Taiho looked down at his daughter, ready to go home. Lyra looked up at him. Home, such a simple word. Such a powerful word. A word she had never been allowed to use before. A broken human pilot pulled her out of a cargo hold and gave her everything she had ever wanted. Yes, father, she said. I am ready to go home. They boarded the Dawn Star together. The old ship hummed to life around them, familiar and warm. And as they flew out into the endless darkness of space, neither of them was alone. They were family. That was enough. That was everything. That was all the galaxy ever needed to be.